When a celebrity beats the biggest charges but still walks out guilty, what does that say about justice? The Diddy case just changed everything. Drug-fueled orgies, forced encounters, silencing victims with threats and payout. That's what Sean Diddy Combs was accused of. But after weeks of gut-wrenching testimony and explosive evidence, the jury gave their final word. Not guilty of racketeering, not guilty of sex trafficking, but they still found him guilty of 2 federal crimes, transporting women for prostitution. Let's talk about what really went down and why justice might still be on hold. When I started following this case, it wasn't just a celebrity case. What really sparked my interest was this is a case that had one of the most powerful and influential men in America, and some might even argue in the world, possibly, finally, going to be held accountable for things that he, at the time, allegedly did, right? And if you've been around a while, you would have heard about a lot of things that this individual, Sean Diddy Combs, aka the King of Freak Offs, may or may not have done over the years. And I'm talking far back as at when Wendy Williams was covering him and talking about him on her show and saying things that he allegedly did, and many other people along the line. One thing that always happened every time someone came out and said something is that he always got away with it, and I'm not saying that I know for a fact that he's guilty of everything, but I think that where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's been a lot of smoke over the years. So here comes this case, and I'm like, wow, charges are being brought against Diddy. This could actually mean justice. But as you all know, the verdict is out. As at when I'm recording this video, we're waiting for the sentencing, and he was found not guilty of the most serious charges and found guilty of transportation for prostitution, 2 counts on that, which is the least of all the charges. I want to remind you that not being guilty or not having been found guilty means that the case was not proven beyond a reasonable doubt. It does not automatically mean innocence. I am just giving my opinion. Please don't come for me. I'm just giving my opinion. But I want to state that because I think people are forgetting that for him to have been found guilty, the case would have had to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
What was your reaction to hearing this verdict?
It's literally a gut punch. That is not good enough. Let me make it very clear, it's not good enough, okay? We're not normalizing this.
O'Day first met Diddy when he picked her to star in an all-female singing group after she competed on the MTV show Making the Band in the early 2000s. You've been speaking out about Sean Diddy Combs, raising alarm bells for years.
A lot of good it did me. My heart is with Cassie. She and all the women that testified had to sit on the stand while the world has debated their credibility and worth.
Cassie Ventura was a star witness in the sex trafficking trial.
Multiple women, including Cassie Ventura, said Diddy's wealth was a shield, that he used drugs, fear, and money to silence them. They described him as a kingpin of chaos, where every party was a trap, every favor came with a price, and no one ever truly felt safe. These weren't isolated claims. They were painful, disturbing patterns. The most serious charges, racketeering and sex trafficking, were tossed, but 2 felony convictions stuck. Diddy was found guilty of transporting women across state lines for prostitution, tied to accusations from 2 former girlfriends. It's not the outcome prosecutors fought for, but it's far from vindication. Diddy is still behind bars. His lawyers offered everything: $1 million bail, family backing, strict restrictions, but the judge shut it down. No bail, no freedom. Why? Because the court sees him as a danger. His sentencing is now the focus, and depending on federal guidelines, he could face up to 20 years behind bars. There are rumors, specifically by this rapper, I think called Big Boy, who did an interview, 2 interviews actually, with Piers Morgan on his show Piers Morgan Uncensored, where he said that he had been hearing that victims or possible witnesses were being behind the scenes, spoken to and paid. Look, this is all alleged. If you watch the interview, you'll see where he's saying that. And he has been saying a lot of things over the years about Diddy that have seemed to be true, some of them, and some of them we still cannot confirm. So I believe him. I believe him. When I watched that interview, I started to actually suspect that he won't be found guilty of the RICO charge. When I was following the proceedings, because I followed it diligently, I saw that public opinion was shifting in favor of Diddy. Why? Because people expect women to be the perfect victims before they can be believed. People were focusing on the fact that they felt like Cassie, in certain cases, gave her consent and she was not squeaky clean. She too did things and whatnot. And because of that, people automatically felt like Diddy was innocent. Whereas 2 things can be true at the same time. It can be true that there were times where Cassie may have given consent, but there were also times where she didn't. It can be true that Cassie may not have been the best version of herself at that time when all of this happened, but it doesn't mean that she lied on the stand against Diddy. 2 things can be true. I don't know the woman who would sit on that stand and speak on the most humiliating, embarrassing things that happened to her and she was a part of, just so you can put someone in prison. Think about it. When she was giving her testimony, I honestly was like, how is she doing it? I won't lie to you guys, I wouldn't be able to sit down there and say that I partook in any of those freak-offs and did all those disgusting things to the hearing of my husband. Heck no, I wouldn't do that. But she did. She already received money from Diddy. She could have very easily just taken the money and stayed quiet, but she didn't. That alone tells me that this was really about fighting for her, but also fighting for other women that had possibly and allegedly gone through the same things. And I think she was very, very brave for doing that. Because like I said, I wouldn't be able to do it. She was brave. And she may not have been the perfect victim, but you guys, who is? Why should a woman have to be perfect before she can be believed? Why does the burden of proof have to change when a woman is the one giving the testimony of what happened to her? Why? People said he was just living a freaky lifestyle. We have seen people living freaky lifestyles. We've heard about a lot of celebrities that live freaky lifestyles. That was more than a freaky lifestyle. In my opinion, that was way more. There was just too much that did not add up. There was too much that showed that there was something else going on behind the scenes. There was too many instances of consent not clearly being there, in my opinion. Again, this is my opinion. Okay? I agree that according to the jurors, the case wasn't proven beyond reasonable doubt. But like I said, that does not mean innocence, and that does not mean that we cannot have our opinions. We too heard what happened. We followed the case, so we formed our own opinion. And I am aware that many people support Diddy right now. They're buying baby oil to show solidarity. Good luck with that. I think, in my opinion, that the king of freak offs, Sean Diddy Combs, is as guilty as sin. And I think that justice was only partially served in this case, but he got away with a lot once again. Why? Because when women testify, when women speak to their experiences, people don't always believe. Because when there's money, power, and influence involved, a lot of times it's harder to get justice. Looking at this case, and I don't know if any of you also noticed it, a lot of the things that we heard that were happening that would have constituted RICO, I highly doubt that those things were happening with only Diddy involved. He seemed like one of the players in a chess game with a lot of other players, if you know what I'm saying. Which would bring me to believe that there will be people out there who would absolutely not want him to be found guilty because they would not want their names to be brought up. That's what I think. Again, I'm entitled to my opinion. I think that even though this is a partial victory for him, his reputation has been ruined. For many people, they will never be able to look at him the same way. I think there will be people who would still want to welcome him back and party with him, even take part in the freak-offs, of course, but many people will not. I think that for the first time, there was some damage done. You know, full justice may not have occurred, but something did happen. I think Cassie should not feel like this was for nothing, because sometimes justice gets delayed but not denied. And honestly, she really, really showed a type of courage that I think will inspire a lot of young women out there who also have experienced similar things to what she experienced. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand the complexities of mental health and mental manipulation. A lot of people don't understand trauma. All they think of is, why did you continue to go back if you were being abused? Why did you continue to reach out to him and tell him that you loved him if you were scared? It's as simple as that for some people. Because the way the mind works, the human mind works, is way more complicated than that. And sometimes when you're trying to detach yourself from a traumatic experience, it takes time, guys. You don't immediately really decipher what has happened to you. Ask any psychologist out there, ask any clinician, they'll tell you this fact, okay? It takes time to disassociate yourself from the person you became while going through this trauma and being with this person that was causing the trauma to who you're trying to become. And so in that time frame, in that period of time when you're trying to do that, it's very, very possible and common for victims to go back to the abuser. That does not mean they're not victims. You know, to many of you who have these very strong opinions about Cassie and about what happened and think that Diddy was innocent, and again, he was found innocent for majority of the charges. I gotta say this for legal reasons, okay? I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm just stating my opinion here. But what I want to ask many of you is, what if it had been your sister, or your daughter, or your mother, or your best friend? What would you have said then? What would you have done in her shoes? Many of you would have said, oh, I would have absolutely left. Did you hear how scared she was? Did you hear the threats? Look, it's very easy for one to sit down in their living room or their kitchen or whatever and just voice out opinions. But except you have worn someone's shoes, you really don't know how it hurts, where it fits. You don't know nothing, okay? And so I'm going to give that woman grace. She may not have been perfect, but I give her grace. Yes, I know that she too did some shady things. Yes, I know that. But it wasn't easy to sit there and give such a gut-wrenching testimony, for goodness sake. It was not easy. Give that woman credits. He could get little time, or he could even get 20 years, who knows? I highly doubt the judge will give him 20 years, but I do think that a tough sentence would send the right message, my opinion. I think a tough sentence would say there may have been reasonable doubt in all the other charges, but yeah, we're still gonna do this because we want to send the right message where it counts. And that's what I think should happen. I'm really showing a lot of solidarity right now. I just feel a lot of solidarity for all the women out there who feel unheard and unseen in this verdict that happened. You know, when it comes to law, it's a very tricky thing. I always tell people, law is it's not always black and white. Not every person you see in prison is guilty, and not every person you see walking on the street is innocent. Because with the right things in place, someone that is guilty can be found innocent, and someone that is innocent can be found guilty. Now, as for this fellow, my opinion is that, I think he was guilty. I think he did do those things he was accused of. I think so. But again, everybody's entitled to their opinion, so don't sue me, please. I really want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what you guys think. I want to hear if you think that justice was served, if you think that it wasn't, or it was served partially. I want to think what you think the sentencing should be. And as you're going to the comment section, please be respectful. This is a safe space for everybody to share their opinions. And as always, don't be a stranger. Like, share, and subscribe, and come back next time, because over here we give commentary that goes where others won't.